But anyway, so what we're going to do is we'll get started here. So first thing we're going to do is we're in the mesh here, and I'm going to make a folder. Call this whatever you want. I call it parts. And we're going to make a copy, not move, the doors, the vehicle frame. This is the exterior without the doors, and one tire, and I usually go with just the front tire. And we're going to copy those because we're going to change these. These are the ones we'll actually edit. All right, so I usually start with a tire. I'll do a save here real quick. I usually start with a tire because it's the easiest to see. Sometimes you can't reduce these very much, and sometimes you can. It just depends. This one may not reduce very much, but a few of the other ones have a lot of inner stuff. Sometimes they have brakes and a brake system in here. So what we're looking at here is, let me just kind of half and half this. We're going to go to the modeling. Make sure you've selected the mesh. And we're going to go to Tricell. Now, in the Tricell, I turn off the wireframe. That's up to you. I just like to look at solid objects. The big thing you want to do is look at this. You want to make this kind of small because otherwise it gets a very large circle that is, well, that one's a little too small, but we'll see. That makes it hard to pick the one you want. Then we go for the brush, we go all in a group, and for the face color, we go by material ID. So the way that this works then is, and what disadvantages to this is that it gives you kind of you can kind of pick things by object. Not entirely, but pretty close. So if you click this, you'll see just that gets highlighted. All the things connected to that piece, essentially. It's not quite that way, but that's essentially how it works. So we're going to delete that out. And this is where you got to be careful because some materials are one-sided. So you can see through, well, you can see through there, which isn't really an issue for my purposes, and that may not save a ton of stuff. Well, that might have because that was an inner circle. But you'll see this is one-sided, and it kind of fills in the gap there. So you can kind of see through it. Now, again, you'll have to make these decisions on what you think is best for your application. See, that might not work so good. This one has an inner tire that was tied to that, so that doesn't really work. So I can't really do that because I lose all of the inner tire and it looks too transparent. But what I could do then, because that didn't work, and it tells me something about how this is put together, and they're all put together a little differently, so you end up where, like I said, some of them have an inner tire that you can take out a whole bunch of stuff and reduce. I think one of the tires I reduced on either the garbage truck or the semi, I reduced by something like half. It's like 50,000 polygons or something. So I go into my modeling, and the rationale here is there's parts of this I can take out, and some parts are going to be more expensive than others in terms of rendering. This little dimple in the middle here has a lot of facets. If you get close here, you see there's quite a number of facets, and that gets very expensive, relatively speaking, compared to other things. Whereas this is not too much, but I'm going to get rid of that. I don't need that. I don't need these, and I don't need this little thing. So if I accept that, get that done, and then again, for my purposes, we're going to get rid of the dimple as well. But that's where you have to decide, you know, if you're going to be close or wherever your view is or whatever you think you want to look at on some of these things, what you want it to look like. You know, you can make that decision if something like that adds the character or the type of look you want to have or not. And again, for my purposes, not so much. So we're going to take that out, hit delete. But sometimes some of these kinds of parts are separable. I think in this case it's all one. Yeah, you'd have to take out the whole ring, which I don't want to do. So go ahead and accept that. Okay, so now we're looking at, let's take a quick look at what we got for an account for that. That was this tire, 32,522, and we've reduced it to 30,292. So not a lot, but it's a couple thousand triangles, and times 4 tires, that's 8,000 triangles. Again, not a tremendous amount, but for the little bit that we did, that's a decent amount of reduction. And these are the kind of efficiencies you can get when you're messing around with this kind of stuff. So another one, then we're going to do the doors, and again, this is just kind of, oh, that's not what I thought it was going to go the other way. Okay, and for me, again, the interior pieces are not going to be seen as much because there just isn't an opportunity for them to be seen at close range. So I'm going to take out the latch and the lock and these hinges. And that's about all I can really do. If you really want to save some polys, get rid of this mirror. And maybe not that, but the mirror. This would cover up a hole, and there might be a hole here that you might not want to get rid of the mirror for. But this mirror would be expensive. You can see all the... Anytime you see curves, that's a trick. Anytime you see faceted, smooth curves like that, that's expensive. All that curve stuff is a lot of triangles, a lot of facets. I'm going to accept that. I'm going to check one thing. I think I want to get rid of this trim, but I got to be careful because some of these trim pieces end up showing through. Whoops. If you take them out. And some cases I want to do that. I'm okay with that. In some cases I'm not. So if we take this piece of... Well, that might go, actually. Good idea is always to look on the other side. So if you see that that's on the other side, what we do is we take it out and see if there's anything underneath it. Because sometimes with this particular set, what they have done is they have stacked, sometimes, in some cases, multiple meshes, one over the top of the other. So yes, there's a door piece and a trim piece. You can see that actually shows through slightly from this side. Let's see. So you can see there's a gap there now, which might be okay. Let's see. Again, at distance and the angle I'm talking about, I'm mostly going to be from above or even flat, maybe here. But once you start getting close, you can see it, but otherwise you really can't. So I may leave that. I may take that out. But again, you can make that decision. But some of these trim pieces end up being like over another piece that if you don't need it, absolutely, isn't going to... It's technically right for the car, but it's not necessarily needed for it to look like a car, or a piece of trim or whatever. So for me, that's good. I don't need the rest of that because, well, I don't know. That's kind of a gap, isn't it? Yeah, this one's not a big deal because, well, let's see. How many triangles was that? Ooh, that can't be right. Is it that much? Wait a minute. Left door. This is where we go back and forth and kind of check because left door. 17,505, 15,700. Yeah, that's like 2,000 triangles. That's a decent amount. Not a heck of a lot. You only have 2 doors, so I think maybe in this case I'll leave them because they do look better that way. And they're not quite enough to really, for only 2 doors, you're not going to save a ton on that. The savings was on the other stuff a little bit. Well, it's not a lot of savings. This is just being efficient. Okay, so again, we're looking at some stuff here that, may or may not need to be taken out all that much. I'm just doing this is my process. These are the things I want to take out, and whether or not anybody else agrees with me or not, this is what I want to do for this particular thing and this particular project. Another one is possibly this one, but I think that's also going to be a problem. Well, maybe not, because they put in weather stripping. Weather sealing. This is basically weather sealing, and there's no way you need that on a car model like this that literally isn't going to, unless you're going to model rain running into the car. So theoretically that could come out too, because in my case I'm not really going to see the interior of I'm only going to see the interior of the door through the windows. So, and maybe if the doors are opened a little bit, but you're not going to really notice that there's no weather stripping. So that's probably a good one to get. I'm glad I caught that. That's actually better than the window trim, because the window trim serves a purpose, but that interior trim, weather sealing doesn't really matter. But again, it is probably fairly expensive, relatively speaking. 16.7, 16.7. Oh, maybe not. Maybe it's not that bad. But again, in the interest of being efficient and getting rid of all the unnecessary stuff, I look at it this way too. Whatever you get rid of that isn't needed is just less that the engine has to deal with. If you plan to use these, I plan to use these where we're going to have hundreds of cars, like a city scene. And, I don't necessarily want to have someone that has to have, the highest end graphics card to run it. And mind you, what we're doing here too is these are really just going to be static mesh models, not skeletal mesh models. You're not going to be running these as animated vehicles unless you figure out how to do the wheels and stuff or something like that. Or if you use it as a base, you could do the same process we're going to do here and leave the tires off, for instance, and then create, outside of Unreal, take that static mesh out, the high quality static mesh that's combined, and then put a skeleton on it and put the wheels on it, type of thing, and make your own version like that. That would be much more lightweight by comparison. Yeah, see, that's 15.1. That actually was quite a bit. Again, we saved a couple thousand just right on that too. 17.5, 18.6. I don't know why that has more. 7, 15, 7, 16.2. Yeah, there's a couple thousand saved on each one of those.